Hello and welcome. So I haven't posted a video in a while, but this one's going to be on something that might explain why I haven't been posting videos. I've been finishing my dissertation, but in this video we're going to be looking at some of the functions I developed for that dissertation. In this video we're going to be looking at specifically these functions around how to handle Carolingian manuscript data. So the data set that I'm working with is the data set that is kind of a work in progress and being compiled by Burton von Nama Edwards. And you can kind of get this on his website. I'll provide a link in the description below. And what you see is a 178-page Word document with all the known Carolingian scriptural commentators and all their known works and all the manuscripts known to witness those works. So you can kind of see this impressive list as just tons of data that we can work with. The problem is, if you want to work with this data, you need to work with it in, even though it's digital, in an analog environment. What I have done is I've migrated all of this data to individual text files by writing a bunch of Python scripts that read this, identify patterns, and then kind of copy and paste all this data into what I've got here. And I don't have the rights to share this because it belongs to Burton von Nama Edwards, into individual text files that we can then examine with these functions I've written over here. And we can call these functions and start to interrogate and quantify all of this data. So in this video, I'm going to simply kind of demonstrate the power of using Python to quantify a analog data set, can put into and migrate it to a digital environment. So the first thing that we're going to do in this little script, and if you notice in this video, I'm using a different IDE. I'm using codeocean.com, which is going to be hosting a lot of the functions that I've developed for my dissertation. These are just some of them for manuscript data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import these functions. And the way we do this in Python is we simply import Carolingian underscore MSS, and we're going to import this as CMSS. That way we can call these functions later in the script without having to write all of that every time. We can just write these four simple letters. The next thing we need to do is we're going to import glob. And I don't think in this video I'm going to be using this at all, but I'm going to import this anyways. One of the things I've done is not only quantified the data, but I've also developed ways to map out the data so you can see visually in giant network maps how Carolingian scriptural commentaries kind of circulated with one another over the course of the Middle Ages. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just demonstrate how to kind of grab the data and quantify it. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to create an object. We're going to call this, let's call it full numbers. And what this is going to do is it's going to read sorry, one second, I can't type and talk. It's going to grab all of the data from every single one of these. I think it's 216 text files. And it's going to go through and analyze it and quantify not only all the different texts that circulated, but how many manuscripts they all kind of circulate in. So we're going to pass a couple arguments that I've written for these functions. We're going to pass, we need to pass in total equals true, and we're also going to pass in author, and we're going to pass in author equals all. This is going to grab all the data for all the authors. And we're going to do this. We're going to print off that object full underscore num. I've cut my fingers, so typing's a little more difficult. And what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to run this. And what it's doing is it's going through and reading all these text files and should fairly quickly, there you go, have an output. And what we see here is an output that is 226, it's a tuple, 226, comma, 2335. What this is the number of texts and the number of manuscripts in which they circulate. So to give you an idea what these text files look like, it looks like this. You have the text as it's listed in Burton von Nama Edwards' dataset, and then we have a list of all the manuscripts. And it's simply going through and grabbing all this data, storing it in memory, and then calculating it because it's just reading off the length of the list. So that's what's happening with this function. But we can do kind of cooler stuff than just that. So here's something else we can do. Let's grab all this data. We're going to do cmss.get data. We're going to actually manually get all this data right now. So we're going to create an object of all the data. Now that we have all that data, let's look at specifically one author. We're going to search for a single author. And you can search for multiple authors too if you like. We're going to pass in two arguments. We're going to pass in all that data into the function, and we're going to pass in specifically the author Rabanus. And what this is going to do is it's going to create an object of all the data that is just relevant to Rabanus. So just the texts that Rabanus wrote. And if we go down the list, we'll see them down here from Rabanus underscore 29 underscore 2 all the way down to Rabanus underscore 31. We don't have a 1 for Rabanus because in the Burton von Emma Edwards dataset, Rabanus's first entry is just his works in general. So what we're going to do is we are going to now, let's just print off this author data so we can kind of see what this is looking like. I'm going to print it off right now. And you're going to see a lot of information that's a little bit difficult to parse. And you can see what's happening right here, just in this first example. So what we see is a list being outputted. And this list is a list of dictionaries. The dictionary has two different keys. One is text and one is MSS, which is manuscripts. Text is the actual text, and the value of the text key is going to be the actual text, and the value of the MSS key is going to be a list of all the different manuscripts that we have in for that text. So what we can do is with this data, let's go ahead and block that out. We're going to print off something else. We're going to make it a little bit more legible. I'm going to say, let's print off, let's do this. Let's do for text data in, we're going to do in author data. That's going to allow us to iterate across this giant list. We're going to say print text data. We're going to just print off the text. So let's do that. We're going to just print off a list of texts. We can see and grab all of the texts that Rabanus wrote that are exegetical in nature. And here you go. You have a nice little list. But we can also do some pretty cool stuff with that. We can do, for example, let's say, all right, we're going to also say for MSN text data, we're going to do MSS. We're going to print off each one of these. Print the manuscript, and we're going to print off a couple line breaks to make this a little more legible so we can see the separation between texts. So what this will do now is it should print off a list, or print off the manuscript, or sorry, the text, and then all of its manuscripts. And it should be somewhat more legible. Oops, let's back that up a little bit because that's a little bit ridiculous. And now it should be a little more legible. And what it's going to do is it's thinking. And this program's a lot faster. The reason why it's slow is because this is all being done on the web. So what we see here is Rabanus' commentary, and then a list of all of these things. But we can also quantify all of this information pretty easily. And this is, again, something that's actually quite powerful that we can do with this information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's get rid of all this. Okay. We're going to say for that, we're going to print off the length of text. I'm going to make sure I'm thinking the logic right on this. All right, text MSS. And this should be printing off a length of each manuscript. So we're going to do print. We're going to also print off the text data text so we can see the text to which it belongs. And what this should do is tell us how many manuscripts were in total are in each text, because it's just basically going to read off the list. What did I do wrong? Oh, there we go. Looks like I got one parentheses out of place. Now it should work. Again, I have another parenthesis out of place. No, I don't. What's wrong with you? Print the length. Oh, I don't have one here. That's why. There we go. Now this should be a happy little cloud in Bob Ross's terms. And there you go. So you can see for each of these how many manuscripts each text has. And because we can get this data quantitatively, now we can do some really fun stuff. We can do something like, let's just make a list of nums, and we're going to make this equal to that. And I'm just going to do this manually so we can kind of see this all happening. So I'm just going to say, we're going to make this a variable. Nums. Oh, that's not nice. There we go. Nums equals that. We're going to say the list of that information. I don't think we need this anymore. That should do it. Nope, we're going to say length. Whoops. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to manually do list nums.append. We're going to append nums. And what this is going to do is it's going to make a list of numbers. And then at the very end, what we can do is we can do something kind of cool. We can just say total equals sum list nums. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just simply print off total. And that should make everyone a happy panda. Let's see. Yep, down there, we see the final output, 455. So what this is this is 455 manuscript witnesses for all of Rabanus's text, or at least all the witnesses that we still have or know to have once existed. This does not include fragments because in the Burton von Amma Edwards dataset, he's very careful to differentiate between manuscripts and fragments, and the way the functions are written is they don't read that. But this is how we can really quickly kind of quantify large amounts of data very, very quickly once we migrate this analog information into a digital environment that we can interact with in Python. So that's all for right now. These are just some of the functions that are kind of being developed right now for this long-term project. Thank you for listening.